The Steelers have long been a consistent and competitive team in the AFC under Mike Tomlin. That continues to be the case this year, especially in a season where the rest of the AFC North has been bombarded with notable injuries, including to star quarterback Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Pittsburgh has also long been associated with a tough and hard-nosed defense. That is the prime difference with this team compared to years past, however. They're ranked 21st in the NFL with an average allowance of 24.4 points per game. They actually were even worse than that before putting a lid on the Colts in Week 9. Depending on which Steelers defense shows up could ultimately decide this matchup. That storyline and several others are amongst the things I'll be watching closely when these two teams take the field on Sunday night. 1. How will new OL Trevor Penning figure into the starting lineup? The Chargers made a move just before Tuesday's deadline to add former Saints first-round pick Trevor Penning. Penning was drafted to play left tackle but has since seen an entire season of starts at right tackle and has played all but 3 games this season at left guard before being dealt. Penning won't be playing left guard for the Chargers, but he's essentially got the chance to play either tackle spot or right guard if Mekhi Becton remains out. However, I think it's a safe bet that Penning will be one of the team's starting tackles against the Steelers. Is that a good thing? Well, most of Penning's starts in his career have come at right tackle 17 during the 2024 season. His 70.1 run blocking grade that year is the best single-season mark of his young career when he's played at least 300 snaps. However, he was called for 13 penalties that year and allowed 54 pressures with 5 sacks. The hope is that Penning cleans up his game under Jim Harbaugh and his over-aggressive nature becomes more of a positive than a drawback. With Bobby Hart expected to be out this week, I foresee Penning playing left tackle this week while Trey Pipkins plays right. It keeps both Penning and Pipkins on the sides they've been on all season, which only sounds logical given the circumstances. 2. Jesse Minter must exploit Steelers' weak edge protection. Entering Week 10, the starting tackle duo for the Steelers has allowed a combined 31 pressures and 6 sacks per Pro Football Focus. Left tackle Broderick Jones leads the team with 18 pressures on the year and is responsible for all 6 of the aforementioned sacks. Luckily, the Chargers have some pretty good edge rushers to try and exploit this weakness. Jesse Minter is seemingly getting the most out of Odafe Oweh as he's recorded 4 sacks over the last 4 games, 2 of which came against the Titans in Week 9. While he's mainly played in a rotational/situational role, the Bolts are still getting consistent pressure from starter Tuli Tuipulotu. Khalil Mack isn't stuffing the stat sheet at much in this phase of his career, but his presence is still felt off the stat sheet all the same. I expect Minter to find a way to get Rodgers with some happy feet by shrinking the pocket as much as possible. Coming off his own game with a sack versus Tennessee, linebacker Henley should be utilized once more on design blitzes. In fact, add safety Derwin James to that list as well, who has been phenomenal coming off the edge from his slot alignment. Rodgers is as seasoned as they come, so it's fair to expect some chess to be played as he navigates and extends plays in a way only uber-experienced passers know how. But as long as the Chargers end up winning more often than not, they'll be in a prime position to come out victorious in prime time. 3. Oron Gadsden could be in store for a big day versus Steelers' second-level defenders. Steelers starting linebackers Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen have coverage grades of 55.6 and 29.8 entering Week 10, respectively, by Pro Football Focus. Wilson has allowed 31 of 34, 91.2%, targets his way to be completed for 288 yards, 169 after the catch, and 2 touchdowns. Queen has allowed 38 of 51 targets, 74.5%, to be completed for 477 yards, 277 after the catch, and 2 touchdowns as well. Those are prime numbers to see if you're hoping for a big day by Oron Gadsden 2 in fantasy football, but it also bodes well for his chances of a big day to help lead the Chargers to victory at home. While both Wilson and Queen are athletic linebackers in their own right, these statistics show there's some discrepancy between what they're physically capable of compared to the obvious lapses in coverage they're suffering. Either way, the young tight end being able to exploit these weaknesses could help take a lot of pressure off the shoulders of Herbert and the rest of the offense. This week we're joined by Ryland Bickley of our Pittsburgh Steelers sister site, Behind the Steel Curtain, to help preview this week's matchup with the Chargers. A big shout out to him for his help, and let's go ahead and jump on in. 1. How has the Aaron Rodgers experience been thus far for the Steelers? Are fans behind him 100%? Are there skeptics in regards to how far he can take the team this season? There were plenty of, understandably, skeptical fans when the season started, but Rodgers has met expectations, and then some during his time with the Steelers. He still has plenty of arm talent and the football IQ of a future Hall of Famer. 100% might be a little optimistic, but for the most part, the Pittsburgh fan base has embraced Rodgers. And the drama issues he was knocked for in Green Bay haven't made any sort of appearance this year. Of course, while Rodgers has looked like the quarterback the Jets wanted to get back in 2023, he still isn't the version of himself that won multiple MVPs with the Packers. Beyond just some expected regression in his natural abilities, namely mobility, Rodgers' unwillingness to push the ball deep has been the biggest flaw in his game this season. Some of it is just the structure of the Steelers' offense. But Rodgers has looked uncomfortable in the pocket at times, even with good protection, rushing to the check down as one of his first reads. He's tied for the fastest time to throw in the NFL season at 2.59 seconds in 2025. I wouldn't say there are many Steelers fans who see this team making it deep in the playoffs. But I also wouldn't put Rodgers as one of the main reasons why that's the case. 2. From an outside perspective, the Steelers' defense looks to be underperforming compared to recent seasons. Is that the truth, or are the numbers not the whole story? What's the overall vibe about the group entering Week 10? It's definitely the truth. Even those of us who follow this team closely were shocked at just how flat the defense, the highest paid in the league, by the way, has looked for much this season. To be fair, there have been some real bright spots, namely the wins over the Browns and Colts. But the defense has flip-flopped back and forth from looking like a top 10 unit to the worst in the league over the first half of the season. Obviously, the reasons why are complicated. But to put it in a nutshell, it comes down to a 3-ish main themes. A. The Steelers are one of the least schematically complex defenses in the league, and they still have communication struggles. B. The team is paying a lot of money to older stars who are still good, but not quite as great as they used to be. C. When the pass rush can't get home, the secondary struggles to succeed. Against Indianapolis last week, Pittsburgh switched from its usual single-high safety tendencies to mixing in a lot of two-high. The result? They slowed down the Colts' quick game and kept Daniel Jones in the pocket long enough to get 5 sacks and a whopping 5 defensive turnovers. One of the things I noticed this week when scouting the Los Angeles offense was how long Justin Herbert likes to hold onto the football. That, along with LA's patchwork O-line, bodes well for Pittsburgh, but it's still hard to tell which Steeler defense we'll see from week to week. 3. If you were Chargers offensive coordinator Greg Roman, how would you go about trying to attack the Steelers' defense? What matchups and players would you attempt to exploit? The Steelers' rushing defense has tightened up as the season has gone on, but there are still some holes in the passing game. Veteran cornerback Darius Slay has been a real weak spot in both coverage and run support. At age 34, it finally seems Father Time has caught up to the 6-time Pro Bowler. And at linebacker, Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson are the embodiment of the up-and-down performance we've seen from the defense as a whole this year. Both are hyper-athletic for their position, and they can keep up with tight ends, but their zone coverage feel has been rough at times. I think the deep crossers LA loves to scheme up could be an issue on Sunday. 4. If you were Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, how would you be planning to stop Rodgers and the Steelers' offense? Which players would you have to keep an eye on the most? The Steelers' offense is a weird one, but when it's rolling, it's strangely fun to watch. It's based on a run game that uses 300-plus-pound tight end Darnell Washington and a 6th offensive lineman to bully the line of scrimmage. Washington is the player to watch. He's the rare tight end who can hold up against defensive ends one-on-one as a blocker, and he's taken strides as a receiver this season. Even the passing game is an extension of the run game outside of the occasional shot to DK Metcalf, with Rodgers distributing quick passes to a stable of tight ends and running backs. If Minter can stop the run game and get Pittsburgh behind the sticks, Rodgers and company will have a tough time getting the chunk gains needed to catch up. This is a team that loves passing behind the first down marker, even on must-have third downs. The Pittsburgh Steelers trade deadline was relatively uneventful, a decision that came as a bit of a surprise. More news: Steelers predicted to deal for $230 million QB as Aaron Rodgers' successor. For a Steelers team that's one of the better in the AFC, although perhaps not among the elite, it would have made sense for the Steelers to go out and add a few players. Unfortunately, the front office decided not to do that, but it appears there were several reasons for this decision. According to the latest from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, one of the potential issues was the Miami Dolphins and how they valued some of their players. There were reports that indicated that the Steelers were interested in Dolphins wide receiver Jaylen Waddle, who would have been one of the better players traded at the deadline. The Steelers, the Giants, and others either had interest or would have had interest if not for the steep price tag, which, depending on what team you asked, Fowler wrote, fluctuated between a first-round pick or a 1+. Some teams had a tough time getting a read on Miami's intentions at the deadline, Fowler writes, which is understandable 4 days removed from general manager Chris Grier's firing. After moving on from Chris Grier, it seemed possible that the Steelers and other teams around the league would have a chance to trade for Waddle. However, later reports suggested that the Dolphins were looking for a first-round pick and more. In the Dolphins' defense, to move on from a player like Waddle, they'd have to be blown away with an offer, despite the organization likely going into another rebuild. More news: Steelers snatch former third-round pick from Super Bowl contender. On the contrary, the Steelers had some work to do, and there were other players traded, including Jakobi Meyers, who they could have landed for a decent price. Just because the Dolphins didn't give the Steelers what they were looking for in terms of an asking price doesn't mean they shouldn't have made a move.